Okay, I need you to stay with me here because what I'm about to share isn't just another medical emergency you'll scroll past. This is a genuine political earthquake, one that is actively shaking the very foundations of what we thought we knew about power in Washington, D.C. At 3:47 this afternoon Eastern Time, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, the architect of Republican strategy for over 2 decades, collapsed on the Senate floor. He was in the middle of a closed-door caucus meeting, speaking directly to his fellow Republican senators about the ongoing situation with Donald Trump. Witnesses say he was in mid-sentence when he abruptly stopped talking, gripped the podium, and then went down. But here's the detail that is sending shockwaves through every corridor of Capitol Hill right now. In the brief seconds before he lost consciousness, multiple senators inside that room report that McConnell uttered something absolutely no one expected to hear from the political titan. According to 3 separate sources who were present, his exact final words before collapsing were, "We lost control of Trump years ago, and now it's destroying everything we built." Then he hit the floor. If you are just discovering this channel, I urge you to hit that subscribe button immediately and make sure those notifications are turned on. Because what unfolds over the next 72 hours will determine whether the Republican Party can survive this moment intact or if it will fracture beyond any hope of repair. This isn't just about the health of an 82-year-old man, although that is deeply significant. This is about the single most powerful Republican in Congress, a man who has spent his entire career building institutional power and enforcing party discipline, publicly admitting in what he may have genuinely believed were his final moments that the party lost control of the very movement it helped create. Let me walk you through exactly what happened inside that room, because the details are critical and they are emerging faster than anyone can keep up with. This was supposed to be a routine Tuesday caucus lunch. Republicans gather every week in the Mansfield Room, a secure space where senators can speak openly without the presence of cameras or reporters. The scheduled topic for today was strategy for the upcoming budget vote, specifically how to handle Donald Trump's latest demands regarding the debt ceiling. According to senators who were in the room, McConnell had been speaking for about 8 minutes. His tone was described by multiple attendees as unusually sharp, displaying a level of frustration they hadn't seen from him in years. He was making a passionate case that the caucus needed to draw a firm line, arguing they couldn't keep capitulating to every Trump demand without completely dismantling their own legislative agenda. Senator Susan Collins, who was sitting just 3 seats away, later told her staff that McConnell seemed visibly agitated but remained perfectly coherent. Then he delivered the line about losing control of Trump. Senator Mitt Romney, who was positioned directly across the table, reports that McConnell paused briefly after saying it, almost as if he was realizing he had spoken a private thought out loud. And then his eyes rolled back. He reached for the podium, his knees buckled, and he went down hard, hitting the floor with a thud that echoed in the suddenly silent room. The room erupted into immediate chaos. Senator John Thune, the minority whip, immediately called out for medical assistance. Capitol physicians were on the scene within 90 seconds. McConnell was unconscious, his pulse was weak but present. They began emergency treatment right there on the floor, administering aid while other senators were hurriedly cleared from the room. Within 4 minutes, a stretcher arrived. Within 7, he was being carefully loaded into a waiting ambulance. Within 12 minutes, he was rushed through the doors of George Washington University Hospital. And within just 15 minutes, the first reports started leaking to the press. Not about his medical condition, but about the words he'd spoken before he collapsed. Because in a city that runs entirely on information and leverage, those words, "We lost control of Trump," that's the kind of ammunition that doesn't just start a conversation. It changes entire political calculations overnight. If you're grasping the enormous stakes here, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story is moving faster than anything I've covered in years. Now, I need to give you some crucial context about Mitch McConnell because understanding exactly who he is and what he represents is essential to understanding why this single moment matters so profoundly. McConnell has been a member of the Senate since 1985. He has served as the Republican leader since 2007, making making him the longest-serving Senate party leader in all of American history. He has been the master architect of the Republican judicial strategy, the man who famously blocked Merrick Garland's Supreme Court nomination, and then ruthlessly rushed through 3 Trump appointees. He has been the chief tactician behind nearly every major legislative fight for 2 decades. He has survived countless challenges to his leadership, outlasting presidents, speakers, and party chairs. He has been nicknamed the Grim Reaper for his ability to kill Democratic legislation before it ever even gets a vote. He is ruthlessly effective, deeply strategic, and famously disciplined. Mitch McConnell does not lose control. He doesn't show weakness. He doesn't admit mistakes, and he certainly does not publicly acknowledge that his party lost control of anything until today. Here's what makes this so incredibly explosive. McConnell's relationship with Trump has always been purely transactional and perpetually tense. He endorsed Trump in 2016 out of political necessity, needing Trump's base to win crucial Senate races. He worked with Trump when it served Republican goals, especially on judicial appointments. But he never liked Trump. He never trusted Trump. And after January 6th, McConnell gave a devastating speech on the Senate floor, declaring Trump was practically and morally responsible for the attack on the Capitol. He ultimately voted to acquit in the impeachment trial on procedural grounds, but his speech afterward was scathing. He said history would judge Trump harshly. He called Trump's conduct a disgraceful dereliction of duty. Those were not casual words. Those were McConnell attempting to end Trump's political career for good. It didn't work. Trump not only survived, he thrived. And McConnell has spent the last 3 years watching his own caucus drift further and further toward Trumpism, while his own ability to control them weakened with every primary election where a Trump-backed candidate won. Let me tell you what has been happening behind the scenes in the Republican caucus over the past 6 months, because it helps explain why McConnell finally said what he said. According to multiple Senate GOP sources, internal tensions have been building to a breaking point. Trump has been making increasingly extreme and unprecedented demands. He wants Republicans to shut down the government unless Democrats agree to defund the various investigations and prosecutions against him. He wants them to refuse to raise the debt ceiling unless President Biden agrees to fire special counsel Jack Smith. He demands loyalty tests, purity pledges, and unconditional support, regardless of what he says or does. And a significant faction of Senate Republicans, the ones who owe their very seats to Trump endorsements, they are completely on board. They are willing to crash the economy, default on the nation's debt, create constitutional crises, whatever Trump demands. But McConnell and what's left of the institutional Republicans, they understand that this path leads directly to electoral disaster in critical swing states and a permanent minority status. They have been desperately trying to hold the line, trying to maintain some semblance of traditional conservative governance. And they have been losing that fight day by day, vote by vote, caucus meeting by caucus meeting. Subscribe to this channel right now if you haven't already, because what I'm about to explain is where this story goes from a medical emergency to a genuine succession crisis that could fundamentally reshape the entire United States Senate. McConnell is currently in the hospital. His condition is officially described as stable but serious. No official diagnosis has been released, but medical experts familiar with the reported symptoms are speculating about everything from a cardiac event to a stroke to a severe stress-related collapse. He is 82 years old. He has had multiple health scares in recent years, including a serious fall last year that hospitalized him for weeks. Even if he makes a full physical recovery, and that is highly uncertain, the fact that he collapsed while speaking about Trump, that he said those specific words, changes everything, because now every single Republican senator has to calculate what comes next. If McConnell cannot continue as leader, who replaces him? And whoever that successor is, will they try to continue McConnell's strategy of managing Trump from within? Or will they fully and completely embrace Trumpism, abandoning any pretense of independence? Let me walk you through the succession dynamics because they are complicated and they matter enormously. If McConnell steps down or is forced out, the most obvious successor would be John Thune, the current minority whip. Thune is a McConnell protege, an institutionalist and a traditional conservative. But Thune has a significant problem. He has been critical of Trump at key moments. He voted to certify the 2020 election results. He has publicly called out Trump's false claims of fraud. The MAGA wing of the caucus genuinely hates him. They would fight his elevation to leader with everything they have. The alternative is someone like Rick Scott of Florida or Ted Cruz of Texas. Both of these men have aggressively positioned themselves as Trump loyalists, and both have been openly campaigning for leadership positions behind the scenes. If Rick Scott or Ted Cruz becomes Republican leader, the party completes its long transformation into a fully Trump-controlled operation. Every single legislative decision becomes about what Trump wants. Every vote becomes a loyalty test. The few remaining institutionalists, the Romneys, the Collinses, the Murkowskis, they become completely and permanently irrelevant. Now, here is what is happening on Capitol Hill this very second. The maneuvering started before McConnell even reached the hospital. Senator Rick Scott released a public statement wishing McConnell a full recovery, then immediately added that the caucus needs leadership that reflects where the party is today, not where it was 20 years ago. That is not subtle. That is Scott positioning himself as the official Trump-backed candidate for leader. Senator Ted Cruz was more careful in his public comments, simply expressing concern for McConnell's health, but sources confirm Cruz has been making calls to other senators all afternoon. Senator John Thune released a statement focused entirely on McConnell's health and recovery with no mention of succession. But behind closed doors, Thune has also been locked in his office, taking nonstop meetings with senior Republican senators. The race to replace Mitch McConnell has already begun, and McConnell isn't even confirmed as stepping down. That is how ruthless Senate politics can be, and that is how incredibly high the stakes are. Let me tell you what Democrats are saying, because their response has been careful but very telling. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer released a public statement saying he is praying for his friend and colleague Mitch McConnell and hoping for a full recovery. But privately, according to Democratic sources, they are already gaming out what McConnell's exit would mean for their legislative agenda. McConnell has been a ruthless opponent, but he has also been predictable. He has been someone you could negotiate with when absolutely necessary. He has been enough of an institutionalist to care about keeping the government functioning. If he is replaced by someone like Rick Scott, who sees every vote as a chance to blow things up for Trump's benefit, governing becomes exponentially harder, if not impossible. Democrats might actually prefer McConnell to stay, even though he has blocked them at every turn, because at least he is rational. At least he understands that defaulting on the debt or shutting down the government long-term has severe consequences that hurt everyone, including Republicans. If this analysis is helping you understand what is actually happening, please smash that like button and share this video. Leave a comment and tell me who you think replaces McConnell if he does step down. Now, here is the angle that is getting less attention, but may actually matter most. What McConnell said before he collapsed: "We lost control of Trump." That is not just a personal admission of frustration. That is a cold, strategic assessment from the most astute political operator in the entire Republican Party. He is saying officially that the party no longer controls its own nominee and frontrunner. He is saying that Trump is now driving the agenda, and Republicans are just reacting. And if that is true, if that is McConnell's genuine final assessment, what does it mean for the next 2 years? It means Trump, who is currently facing multiple criminal trials, who is making increasingly authoritarian statements, who is openly calling for vengeance against his enemies, he is in complete control of the Republican Party's direction. And there is no longer a McConnell figure left who can constrain him. Let's talk about what this means for the 2024 election. Because this isn't just about Senate leadership. This is about whether the Republican Party can actually win swing states with a fully Trumpified message. McConnell understood something that the MAGA wing refuses to accept. Trump lost in 2020. Republicans significantly underperformed in 2022 in nearly every race where Trump was the dominant issue. Swing voters in suburban districts, the people who actually decide close elections, they are exhausted by Trump. They want normalcy. They want competence. They want boring governance. McConnell's long-term strategy has been to let Trump dominate the primary to secure the base, but then pivot to a message of mainstream conservatism for the general election. The goal was to keep Trump's voters while reassuring swing voters that responsible adults were still in charge. But that strategy requires Trump to be controllable, to be willing to moderate his message, to accept guidance from party leadership. And if McConnell's final public assessment is that they lost control years ago, that strategy is completely dead. Which means Republicans are going into 2024 betting everything on Trump's ability to win while being completely himself, completely unfiltered, and completely unpredictable. Here is what we are learning about McConnell's current condition from hospital sources. He is conscious now. He is speaking. Doctors are running a battery of tests to determine what caused the collapse. His family has been notified and is traveling to D.C. Senate GOP leadership is expected to visit the hospital this evening. But here is what sources close to McConnell are saying privately. Even if he physically recovers, even if doctors eventually clear him to return to work, he is 82 years old, and he just collapsed while discussing the stress of managing Donald Trump. His colleagues were right there. They saw it happen. They heard what he said. The entire caucus now knows that the job of leading Republicans in the Trump era literally broke him. That knowledge fundamentally changes the dynamic. Because if the stress of the job can do this to Mitch McConnell, one of the toughest political operators in modern history, what does that tell every other senator about the price of standing up to Trump? Now, let me walk you through what happens procedurally if McConnell cannot continue. The Republican caucus would meet to elect a new leader. Every Republican senator gets one vote. It is done by secret ballot. That secrecy matters in theory because it allows senators to vote for who they actually want without immediately facing primary challenges from Trump supporters. But there is a major complication. Any leadership election held right now automatically becomes a public referendum on Trump. Vote for Thune, and you are voting for institutionalism and some level of Trump management. Vote for Scott or Cruz, and you are voting for full MAGA, full loyalty, and no guardrails. And every single senator knows that however they vote, even in secret, eventually becomes known. Donors demand to know, activists demand to know, Trump demands to know. So the secret ballot isn't really as secret as it should be, which means the intense pressure to vote for a Trump loyalist is overwhelming. Even if senators privately believe that would be a disaster for the party and the country. Let me give you 3 scenarios for how this could play out. Scenario 1, McConnell recovers and returns to leadership, but this health scare, combined with his public admission about losing control of Trump, permanently weakens him. He becomes a lame duck leader. The MAGA faction simply ignores him. Thune or someone else effectively runs the caucus day to day. McConnell stays on as a figurehead, but his real power is gone. Scenario 2, McConnell steps down. Thune becomes leader and tries to continue McConnell's strategy. But without McConnell's decades of accumulated power, relationships, and sheer political capital, Thune cannot hold the increasingly fractured caucus together. Republicans splinter into open warring MAGA and institutionalist factions. Scenario 3, McConnell steps down. A Trump loyalist like Rick Scott becomes leader, and the Republican Senate caucus becomes fully Trumpified. Every single decision runs through Mar-a-Lago first. Every vote is a loyalty test. The few remaining moderates become completely irrelevant or are forced into early retirement. Here's what I think is most likely to happen based on conversations with people who deeply understand Senate dynamics. McConnell will try to stay. He has fought for power his entire career. He is not going to give it up easily, but his effectiveness is now shot. Everyone knows that the Trump situation stresses him to the point of physical collapse. His admission that they lost control is out there. It cannot be taken back. So he stays as a weakened, lame duck leader until after the 2024 election, desperately hoping Trump loses and the fever finally breaks. If Trump wins, McConnell quietly retires. If Trump loses, McConnell attempts to rebuild the party in his image one more time. But either way, his era is definitively ending. The admission we heard today, we lost control of Trump, that is his epitaph. That is how history will remember him, as the man who built a powerful political machine and then watched helplessly as it got hijacked right out from under him. Let me tell you about the immediate political fallout, because it is already happening in real time. House Republicans are watching this unfold and calculating that if Senate Republicans can't control Trump, why should they even try? Speaker Mike Johnson, who is already struggling desperately to manage his own MAGA caucus, just got significantly weaker. Every House Republican who was looking to McConnell as a model for how to manage Trump without being consumed by him, they just watched that model collapse, literally and figuratively. Meanwhile, Donald Trump himself has not commented yet. No Truth Social posts about McConnell's health, no statement wishing him a recovery, nothing. And that silence speaks incredibly loud. Trump knows exactly what McConnell said. His people were texting with senators inside that room within minutes. Trump knows McConnell called him uncontrollable. And Trump's calculated lack of response is its own kind of power play. He is not even dignifying it with attention. He is demonstrating to the world that McConnell, now hospitalized and diminished, isn't even worth responding to. Here is what Democrats should be paying the closest attention to. If McConnell's assessment is correct, if Republicans have genuinely lost control of Trump years ago, then Democrats aren't just running against a traditional political party in 2024. They are running against a full-blown personality cult that happens to have ballot access and institutional infrastructure. That requires a completely different, more aggressive campaign strategy. You cannot negotiate with a cult. You cannot moderate their positions. You cannot appeal to their institutional interests. You can only defeat them or lose to them. And everything Mitch McConnell built over 40 years in the Senate, all that institutional knowledge about how to negotiate, compromise, and build coalitions, none of it matters anymore if the other side's only goal is whatever Donald Trump wants on any given day.